I'm not even on the rules committee.
Honestly, we may not have a rules committee.
There's not a,
Two of the three aren't here.
yeah, there's no quorum, so I'm just gonna say
I don't
it's,
think I'm on that.
it's Scott, Larry, and Amy.
Oh.
So there's not even a quorum for that.
He's not even here.
Hey,
Oh,
question.
the head person's supposed to be here.
It'd be
That's-
nice if you're gonna set up a meeting, we're gonna attend. Just kinda,
Do I still?
Hi, Amy.
Hello.
How are you?
yeah, if you want to get started.
It's been a long week. I spent Wednesday through Sunday at the Army,
Oh,
and I had my PT test on Friday with a jacked up ankle.
oh no.
So that was great. Now I'm just in pain, but it is what it is. Hey, Jake.
All right, it's 6 o'clock, so I will call the utility committee to order, and we'll have Greg come up and talk.
Is this your first one?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Greg Toth, the Superintendent CEO of Logansport Utilities. We're here today to ask that the Utility Committee and Finance Committee, Dave, push our bond resolution forward to City Council for approval. This is, in the course of action, this is administrative, frankly. This is the follow-up on the bond for the wastewater capital improvement plan that was approved last year. The total amount is $38.9 million. It's everything that we've described in previous plans that's already built into our rate case. For those of you who have been out there, this is for the Headworks replacement program and everything associated with that. There's two bonds that are in here. There's a bond funding that we're going to close on before the end of this year. And then there's a 25-26 bond. Both of those will be approved in this bond measure, but we'll only draw on those when we need them as projects need funded. We are on schedule and on budget on all of the previous bonds and all the bonds up to this point and all of the projects up to this point. Heavy pressure on inflation, really costing us to really use most of the contingency money up just on material prices. And we're being squeezed on interest rates. You know, we budgeted what we thought was in advance of, 3.5%, thinking that was going to be high, thinking that the SRF was going to offer us 2.5%. Even their best rate now is going to be 3.25. So we do have some of those built in. It's just eating into our contingency money. As of now, we're not going to make any changes to the projects or to the scope or size of the projects. We think that through a couple creative methods, we think we can keep driving the price down of the projects, value engineering, and doing some other things that the SRF has proposed that seems to have been working on the projects that we started. So this is me asking for you to approve the ordinance to push forward the $38.9 million bond.
Can you, Greg, what's the amounts of the two different bonds? You said you're gonna,
Yeah. One is, the first one is 20.7 million, 20,750,000. The second bond is 14,264,162. The project contingency grant funding is $3.5 million. And what that means is that's the contingency money we put in, plus any grant money would come off of that, depending on what we receive. That brings the total amount to $38,569,000. And then we've got $331,000 worth of fees to the state called cost of issuance. And that brings the total to $38,900,000 even. And the projects are, the main project is the plant headworks and most of the associated work going with that, pump replacements, centrifuges, chlorine contact tank, non-potable water system. This is all at the headworks, everything you toured that we talked about removing and replacing. Kocing Construction has already been selected to do this project, and we're already started the value engineering project. I think we're in a 60% design build phase, so it's coming along. And this will be on schedule and on budget, I'm sure.
So they haven't nailed down a price for the guaranteed savings yet?
No, but it'll be under the number for sure. I mean, that's all a part of it. But, you know, we're really taking measures to make sure of this kind of thing. I'll give you a small example. You know, we found a way to take some of the excessive fill dirt that we had, a couple 100,000 tons that we had at our yard in Michigan Avenue, and using a local contractor to screen that into usable product for us that we're actually going to inventory out and use for these projects, because we can do it ourselves for about $7 or $8 a ton, and aggregate at this level, it can be anywhere from $20 to $22 a ton. So just by us planning ahead, if we have 100,000 tons or 150,000 tons of that kind of fill available, and that just comes right off the price of these projects. And that's the kind of thing that we're trying to work on to try to make it as cost effective as we can. I mean, the easiest thing for us to do would just to be buy dirt. But we thought, you know, what else can we do to drive the price down? And we had the materials there, and came up with a creative way to do it. And that's just one of the ways that we're looking to bring the pricing down.
The other question I had, Greg, and this is really maybe for some of the others, you know, I've sat in a lot of your meetings and heard some of this, but can you kind of explain, I know there was the sludge plant for Tyson's originally was in the plan, and that's been taken out because of the agreement you made with them, and can you
Yeah.
kind of bring them up to speed on?
Sure, yeah. So we didn't really announce it publicly. We were going to let Tyson do that, but through an agreement with the EPA, Tyson took over the pretreatment facility that we once owned at their facility. So we owned it and serviced it. What they're doing now is taking over the operation of the pretreatment facility. And what that's allowing us to do is only monitor what they deliver, and they're now responsible for all of the pretreatment before it comes to our plant. It was requested by the EPA because they didn't want us to pre-treat and treat, because it's kind of like, you know, serving both sides. Tyson was happy to do that. This was one of the few plants that they owned that they didn't own the pretreatment facility. They took it over from us. They did it in advance of the schedule. It's really saving us hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. It's a really good value and a good deal for us. And the output that we're seeing from them working on it and the investment they have, we're really seeing a really good product coming from them. So we're really pleased with it. It's driving down our chemical price, our chemical costs, and other things, because they're really focusing on what their output is. They're being much more stable and useful at our plant than it once was. So we were going to invest in the bond ordinance in 2026. We had put aside $6.5 million to remove phosphorus from the Tyson plant if we were going to have to invest in it. Well, that capital investment will no longer be our responsibility. So in this bond, in the $38.9 million, I have $6.5 million set aside for that phosphorus removal. So we could do a couple different things. We could take that and either reduce the amount of the bond. We could take that and see how much of that we're going to need to either make up any shortcomings if we find any. The second thing that we've been working on is we know that the EPA is telling us that biosolids are no longer going to be accepted at landfills in the near future. So I think you've heard us talk about the pelletizer, which is turning the biosolids into a fertilizer product. We wanted to fund that, perhaps using this money. Well, we hired Baker Tilly to look at, is there a possibility that we could get IRA money, Inflation Reduction Act money, to help us fund that? We believe that we could get 60 to 70% funding from that if we apply some of the requirements, such as solar and some other things that would be needed for that. So we may not need to spend all of that. So to Dave's point, whatever we don't spend, we just won't borrow. So when it comes down to taking out that last bond, whatever's not borrowed will then just get reduced from the rate that we're charging the customer in that final year or the final 2 years. So if we had a rate increase scheduled and it was, I think, $7 or $8, I'm just giving you an example. If we pull that off there, that would reduce that by $3 or $4 for that last rate increase. I'm just giving you that example. I don't know what the real number is, but we would take that number off and reduce the final rate increase. So if we don't need it, we're not going to use it.
Is there any, on that funding, is there any timeline on that?
No, there's not. There's not a timeline on it. One of the things about it, though, Dave, is you have to fund it up front and then you get reimbursed for it. And that keeps some of the cities from being able to do it because, it's probably a $5 million project, especially if we had to add solar into it. And so, but we would make sure that we were checking all the boxes before we started the project, for sure. And that would be a big cost savings for us, too. Landfilling biosolids is only going to get more and more expensive. Biosolids is what comes out of the plant after we squeeze all the liquid out of it. And you know what I'm talking about. I mean biosolids. But we can turn it into fertilizer. And a local company in Kokomo can help us with that. And it's a process that's very effective and something that we have a lot of interest in.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Greg.
Appreciate you being progressive.
To finance, right?
I'm going to try to be, Amy, as best I can.
Everybody in favor of moving this on?
Okay. Close
All
the
right.
utility meeting.
And before he moves, we'll open the finance, and unless there's any other questions, we're going to move this to council for November 6th.
Yeah, the date is, we're going to talk about it, first reading November 6th, and then hopefully a second reading on 12/4?
Yeah.
Right, the following month? Okay, sounds good.
Everybody okay with? All right, thank you, Greg.
Everybody.
Thank you.
You're all welcome to come out. Haley came out, but if you want to come see the place, happy to show it to you, and you can see what we're doing and what it's going to look like, and look at all the plans. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks.
All right, we'll continue the finance meeting. Next on the agenda would be Mr. Messer from Baker Tilly to talk to us a little bit about investments.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Messer with Baker Tilly, and Dwayne asked me to come up and say a few words about our investment service that hopefully you guys are considering using. And I think I would just plan on going over these 2 slides that Dwayne has, but before that, just explain a little bit about who we are. I work for Baker Tilly Investment Services. We are a subsidiary of Bigger Baker Tilly, and our group manages public funds for cities, towns, counties, schools. We manage about $2.7 billion worth of public funds. So, it's quite a bit of money, and we have the responsibility to help invest the construction dollars that the gentleman was just talking about earlier, plus we invest operating funds, which is what we're going to talk about here tonight. So our focus is to try to generate, a good return, a safe return, and do it under public funds code. So I thought maybe I would explain our process and just kind of go through this sheet here. The way it works is we would sit down with Dwayne and anybody else that is kind of a stakeholder in spending money for the city and try to determine a core investable balance. And by that, I mean dollars that you can set aside that you don't necessarily need to run the city, right away, whether it's, just payroll or those kind of general expenses, or even looking forward at construction expenses that you might have. And the idea there is that you can set those aside, invest those in a more structured manner, with the idea, of course, of earning additional interest in a safe manner. I think the easiest way to determine a core investable balance is, and Dwayne and I will go over this, is to kind of look back over the past 24 months and run a fund balance report. And along that line, what's the low point for Civil City, right? What's the low balance in any given month? And that's kind of the starting point to say, well, you know, I don't know what that number is for you guys, but if it's 10 or 15 million, whatever that is, that's the starting point. And I'm not saying we use all of that money, but some of those dollars then, because you know you're likely not to go below that, can be set aside and invested in a more structured manner. So that's kind of the easy way to calculate a core investable balance. Once we have that, and then we would sit down with Dwayne and try to determine what are your liquidity needs, if any, with this money? Might you possibly go below that number? And if not, then what's the market doing, and what's our recommendation on structuring this in terms of laying it out? And on the second page, when we get to the second page, we'll show you a sample portfolio of how it might look. And once we have an agreed to strategy, then our investment desk kind of gets busy doing all the competitive bidding. So pursuant to State Public Funds Code, we're going to bid to every local bank when it comes to CDs, but we're also going to bid to a number of brokers that we work with for U.S. Treasuries and agency securities, which are all eligible investment under State Public Funds Code and very safe for investing public funds. But there are many times where treasuries and agencies are actually a better rate of return than certificate of deposit. So we want to look at all of them when we're bidding out investments for you guys. Once those bids come in, we would basically put together a bid sheet for Dwayne to take a look at, make a recommendation. Of course, let's take the highest bid, the highest rate of return on each investment. And if Dwayne's okay with it, we put together essentially a direction letter that goes to the custodian, directing the custodian to settle all those investments, whether it's wiring money to the winning bank for a CD or whether it's settling a treasury into the account. There is a custodial account that's set up. They hold all the investments, and Dwayne would get, the city would get a monthly report of all investment activity. You can look at it online. You see at any given time, here's the CDs we have, here's the treasuries that we have, and your monthly report comes in just like your bank report would come in every month. Once we have our initial structure, probably a couple weeks before the first investment comes due, we'll reconnect and say, here's what we see in the market. Do you have any need for this money? Otherwise, our recommendation is to do this with it. Reinvest it here, or here, in terms of how far out to go, and then continue in that process, kind of ongoing. So if you want to go to the second page. This is just an example. I know this is busy. Sorry about that. But on the, basically, look at the left column, far left column where it says investment and it says initial investment. So this is an example of if we took $10 million and how might we structure $10 million of investments, where it says initial investment there, and then right next to it says amount. If we were to break 5 investments up at $2 million each, and then right next to that says term, and so you can see the term. So $2 million for 3 months, 2 for 6, 9, 18, and 24. And the investment type is either a public fund, CD, or treasury. So we're going to be looking at really bidding it out to multiple banks and brokers. And the estimated rate is just what we've seen in the marketplace recently in terms of rate of return on a 3-month investment. And then where it says estimated interest earnings is it's basically, that's the estimated interest on that rate for $2 million over that period of time. And if we continue with that program and kind of reinvested dollars every time they came due, in this manner, you'd see the first year is $539,000, second year, $541,000, for a total of, $1,081,000 over 2 years. That's kind of how the process works. I'm going to stop right there and see if there's any questions. There's a,
What have we been getting now? What percent have we been getting now?
Right now, we're getting 5.2, I think 5.27 on what we have in the savings, but we know that's going to change. The market, the interest is not going to stay constant, and so this is the idea, is try to hedge that, get ourselves locked in and continue to get that type of return on this money.
I thought that was pretty close, and then, so the way things are going, this would,
The advantage
It's not
is,
gonna be stable
let's
with
just
everyone.
kind of manage and look ahead where, I don't have that kind of time or ability to foresee what's going on. They've got a much better handle on it. And in terms of cost, it's very cost effective. I think we're looking at 12 points for a cost, which is minimal compared to what we'd be looking at in terms of earnings. You're looking at a very small amount, and that's all tax-free money. I mean, that's saving the taxpayers that much money by generating that capital.
that was a very good question, by the way, and I was hoping somebody would ask that, so I could, do you mind if I kind of, so, that the Federal Reserve they've gone to 0% interest rates twice in the last, 15 years, right? They're raising interest rates very quickly. It's probably putting a lot of pressure on the economy right now, really tough. Mortgage rates are 8%. So, we're probably getting pretty close to the top in terms of interest rate increases. And, once they start going down, it's going to go down fast. So you can see the way that structure is there, where we have some that are coming due, investments that are coming due pretty quickly. Rates are really good, and some that are coming due longer. We call that a barbell. So we're investing some short and some longer. The reason we're investing longer is because we want to protect, because we don't know when they're going to lower rates, but we think they're probably getting close. So we're starting to take some portfolios out a little bit longer to kind of hedge against that, or trying to plan for when the rates start to go down a little bit.
Do you foresee, I've read just a little bit here recently that they're looking at another increase here probably in November?
They probably will. I think they're, if you read between the lines with the Fed, that they need unemployment, but they're not getting unemployment. It's, for some reason, people are, still, well, I guess maybe people have 2 or 3 jobs. I'm not sure exactly how they count them, but they're waiting for that, because that's when people can't make their mortgage payments, they can't make their car payments, and then that's when things start to get bad. But the economy seems to be pretty resilient in the face of all these interest rate increases. It's pretty amazing. But I think we're close. I think we may have another one before the end of the year.
Do you have any questions you want to ask, or Jacob, or?
No, we saw their presentation. Reputable company. There's no admin fees, it's just a 12 basis points. They just think we're losing potential revenue in the future if we don't lock into some investment strategy. So I think they're the best at what they do.
Can I make a couple more points? I think that next, I think at the meeting, you'll have also the opportunity to look at the investment policy. Is that correct? Will that be on there? As well as a resolution that allows you to, or maybe it'll be an ordinance, that will allow you to invest longer than 2 years. Right now, if we didn't pass an ordinance, you can only invest up to 24 months. That's state law. But if you pass an ordinance along with an investment policy, it gives us the flexibility to invest out a little bit longer than 2 years. And once we start seeing the Fed, we're going down, we don't know how quickly they'll go down, but we want to, if we could lock in maybe even a little bit more than 24 months, it might not be a bad idea as long as we're comfortable with liquidity to get out maybe 30 months or something like that. But right now, we couldn't go out more than 24. So if it's possible to consider that, that would be great. It's helpful to be able to do that.
I think it's a good problem to have. What if we would need that money before the 36 months? Was that, what penalties would there be?
Well, two things with that. One, if we buy bank CDs and you turn them in early, there are definitely penalties. Usually it eats up pretty much all of your interest. There, likely if we were going to go out 30 months or 24 or 30, we're probably going to look at U.S. Treasuries. And those are, if interest rates start to go down, the value of a treasury actually goes up. So if you need the money early, that's a good thing, if the value of it is actually higher than when you bought it. So that's why we like treasuries. They're a little more flexible if you buy them out further. But that also goes back to our discussion early on about, will we need this money, right? And we're very careful with folks when we do that to make sure. I mean, if we invested $10 million and we needed money way out there at the end, it means we needed all 10 million for some reason. Probably something bad must have happened in order for that to occur. So that's why we have to.
You're aware it's an election year, right?
I'm aware.
Okay. Good.
I'm aware.
Okay.
This is kind of, it's like you said, this is kind of time sensitive. That's the reason why we're pushing it through like we are now, to say, hey, we want to get this locked in and we want to get the investment started right away or as quick as possible so that we can continue to get those rates that we want.
Yes, sounds like a good plan to me. Because right now with Horizon, is it all just in like one account, or do they spread it out? In like
They spread it out, but it's across our city accounts, but when the interest rates go down, they're going to go down. I mean, this is just something I've been able to bargain with them because of the amount of money we have invested, but we can leverage the other way by having this longer term investment and get more money in the long run. So I would ask that you'd move forward with the ordinance that allows invest in a longer period of time and to move forward with the letter of engagement to get this started.
Okay with moving this forward? Okay. So that was pretty easy. And I guess the one thing that I would mention is we'll still have cash on hand that we can still be drawing in the interest, hopefully, that we're currently getting from Horizon.
Correct.
So.
Yeah. When I say core balance, that's going to be way less than, I mean, you'll still have, yes, your balances will still be very large at Horizon.
Right.
Even after.
All right. Anybody else? All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you very much. Thank you for
Appreciate your time. continue with the Baker Tilly theme. Andy, you can come on up. Andy's here to talk to you about an airport bond.
Good evening, Andy Mauser, also with Baker Tilly. And I do just want to clarify, obviously do quite a bit of work with the city, really here this evening on behalf of the Logansport Cass County Airport Authority. So we are currently working with the Airport Authority on a financing. Really because they are a joint city council, or excuse me, a joint city county airport authority, there's really kind of a three-step approval that they have to go through. One is the Airport Authority Board has to go through an approval. They've introduced their resolution, and then hopefully we'll be adopting that this week. It also has to go through city approval, so that's why we're bringing it here to your committee here this evening, and then hopefully would have it on the agenda for the November 6th meeting. And then they do also have to go through county council approval as well. So they are planning to go to the county council in mid-November. But the financing will be for new hangar improvements out at the airport. It's just over a $2 million project, all in. And the plan is to finance that through a $1 million bond, and then the remainder of the project will be paid for from Airport Authority cash on hand. You do have a resolution that the council would be approving, and it really just has kind of two parameters in it. One would be a maximum par amount on the financing of 1.2 million. Again, the Airport Authority anticipates a bond size of even $1 million, and then it also would approve a maximum 10-year term on the financing, and they do anticipate issuing a 10-year bond. Just so you're aware, it is a small general obligation bond, just that $1 million, and the repayment will be stretched across the 10-year period, and then that payment will be levied on all taxpayers within the entire county. So not just city taxpayers, but really the tax base of the entire county. The countywide assessed values growing pretty steadily. This past year was up from about 1.5 billion to almost 1.7 billion, about 11% growth. So when we take, the payments will be somewhere between probably $150,000 per year, and then levy that across the full, almost $1.7 billion tax base. Tax impacts from this should be very, very minor, certainly less than 1 cent on the total tax rate. So definitely wanted to answer any questions that you might have here. And then again, if it's helpful, I'd be glad to attend the city council meeting as well, but your kind of 2-page resolution would be the only item that you would need to approve here.
Is that, just out of curiosity, is that the only revenue source they have is the tax base out there? I mean, from the citizens, just that one tax? Or did it?
I think they have a couple other smaller tax-supported funds, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
And then obviously some revenues as well. So they do have some cash on hand, which is where they are going to come up with that million, about $1 million to pay for about half of the project.
Anybody have any questions for Andy? I think we're okay to move that forward then? Yeah. Andy, I don't know that you need to come to the meeting, but unless somebody feels like there's a need for him to come to our council meeting. Okay.
Don't hesitate to reach out if any questions between now and then, and I might check in with Dwayne as we get closer and just make
Okay.
sure. But if you need me, I'm certainly happy to make the trip up.
All right, thank you, Andy.
All right, thank you.
Bill, the annexation information?
More processes. Just a quick reminder, you passed Resolution 2023-116, which was your full support of the annexation.
RDC then bought the property. Then RDC, as a sole owner, sent a petition into you guys saying they wanted annexed, and that's where we're at. So you passed on first hearing on September 11th. We held a public hearing in October. What's left is the second hearing, or the second approval process, and we also have to pass a fiscal plan. I sent in ordinance 2023-19 as amended, and the only thing that basically has changed, currently it is in the Cass County Fire District, and since they were established after 1987, once you pass this ordinance, we have to wait for 2 Januaries after the ordinance is passed for it to take effect. So if the ordinance is passed this year, we will not be able to annex it January 1st of 2024. They'll have to wait till January 1st, 2025. So that's what the amendment states. The other thing you have is the resolution for the fiscal plan that was done by Baker Tilly. Imagine that. Dean Rogers did that. You have many pages on what that looks like. Basically, in the first year after annexation, so before December 31st of 2025 hits, we, the city, have to provide fire and police protection as a coverage area. So they in there have their guesstimated cost for that 60 acres. Basically, it was fuel expenses. As you can see, it was less than $1,500 for both combined, but that's, again, 2026. The other thing in an annexation is it states within 3 years, you have to make available the property for a developer if they want to put city services in. But it's not us paying for it, it'd be on them. So you'll see that language throughout the fiscal plan. I just want to draw your attention to page 12 if you have it. I know you have it. It says no capital costs are anticipated. So I didn't want you to think within 3 years you have to provide electric and sewage and water. That's not the case. You have to make it available to a developer, if we find a developer, to provide those services. But it's not on you for your budget. That's why they have in there, there's no capital costs anticipated. So that's basically where we're at. Hopefully you'll pass, or you'll move forward both of these, and then on November 6th, you would have to review, bring up for review the resolution of the fiscal plan, and then the second reading of the amended ordinance.
So we'd have to, typically, Dwayne puts the old business first, so we just need to table this till we pass the resolution.
You need to pass the resolution first, correct, and then the second reading would be second.
Any questions for Bill?
I know it's a tedious process. We're getting there. We're getting there.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Move that forward. All right, Aaron's not here today, but the next thing on the agenda was the flood insurance study for the riverfront. She was at the last finance meeting where we talked about this. We considered, the hope was that we'd put it in next year's budget, and we didn't. So what I would like to propose is, I believe in her words, there were around 20 homes along Miles and Douglas that can benefit from this. They have to buy flood insurance all the time. It restricts what they can do with their property. And this survey would run from the confluence of the Wabash River all the way up, basically to just beyond the city limits to the east. And if this works out the way they anticipate, it would alleviate the burden from those homeowners in that area. The cost of it is not to exceed $49,800 to do this work. I did approach Greg about it. Greg didn't feel like it was a utility responsibility. He felt like by them taking out the dam, they'd done their part to alleviate that burden for the homeowners, and that this was more of a City of Logansport responsibility, which I guess I tend to agree with that. So it's back on the table, and what I would propose is that we appropriate the money out of seeded so that we can get this study started in the near future. Anybody have any questions about what we discussed at the last finance meeting? I think Aaron laid it out pretty well.
How far east? did
Says
you-
it would go just beyond the city limits, but when you get out so far, they have to, the old flood zone and the new flood zone have to come within half a foot of each other before you can stop the continuation of it. And they anticipate that being probably before Broad Ripple Bridge.
I know there's flooding issues out there. I didn't know, I know
Yeah.
they're not in the city, but I was hoping maybe some of them would benefit from that. So,
So, any questions, any thoughts on this?
Fine with appropriating seated. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
All right, we'll move that forward. Transfers. Oh, I don't see anybody here. I had Broadway Broadband back on the agenda. They had said they might come tonight, but I don't see them, so we'll pass them over. Transfer of appropriations. Oh, Jan's not here. We have two from Jan. She is moving money from machinery to utilities to finish paying out utilities for the year. She's requesting a $3,000 transfer. Is she out of money now, Dwayne, or
Pretty close.
pretty close? And the other is for, is an appropriation from a line item for asphalt, gravel, and dirt to printing. It says new print wrap to replace damaged wrap at fitness court.
Down at Riverside where the fitness court that was put in the last year has got damage to the decorative, or not, I don't want to say decorative, to the advertisement or the sponsorship area of it, and it needs to be redone so that,
Vandalized, or is it just, it was vandalized? Okay, so she's requesting an appropriation of a transfer of $3,425 for that. Does anybody have any issues with either of those transfers?
And you're-
I do not.
All righty. Dwayne, I'm going to let you explain the next one. This is the one for the VEST, the
Vest?
grant fund.
okay. If I can find which one that is here. Yeah. This was we have a federal grant, vest grant fund that Travis uses for buying vests for his officers. And there was a vest bought at the end of 2019. It didn't get, the claim didn't get submitted, and we paid it, but it didn't get submitted from the police department into our department in time, and it missed the cutoff for reimbursement. So this fund's been in deficit of $308.81 for basically 4 years. What we'd like to do is take care of that and get it off the books, so State Board of Accounts quits looking at it, and the federal grant administration quits looking at us like we're cheating them out of money. So what I'd like to do, I looked and I haven't had a chance to talk to Travis, but we have extra money in your PPE that we could use for this and just transfer that 308. I think you've got about $8,000 in there, almost 9,000, and we could take 300 and transfer over.
Yeah, and this was when, officer was, but there was a thing that had to do with COVID when we hired them and when we got paid, and then how the grant
Yeah.
received to how we have to pay it back. So
Yeah.
it's just we're allowed so many vests a year.
Mm-hmm.
He got hired on, and then we couldn't hire him because of COVID. So
Yeah.
I knew Ryan talked to Ross 2 weeks ago. about
Yeah.
it, so.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's who actually brought it to our attention. Ross, our grant administrator, said, hey, we need to take care of this, especially since we just went through a federal audit. So this will take care of that. And it's a pretty simple process, so.
And the last one is community development. Would like to transfer $9,000 from their pickup truck line item to machinery and equipment for a copy machine scanner. This is something we actually talked about. Can you get us some, yeah, come on up. If you can get us some information to go along with this request, that's about really all we'd need before the November 6th meeting, just so we have it.
Yeah, it's just a scanner that you can scan in blueprints. I got a whole stack of them over here in a room that we don't know, what box to look in if we're looking for a specific one. So this scanner, if we scan them in, we can log them in under address and building name and year, and that way we can look them up faster and we could actually reprint the blueprints out. So I know since I have started that I have had over probably 2 handfuls of questions. Do you have the blueprint of such and such building? And I said, maybe.
Yeah.
So, but that's what that will do. We can scan all of them in and we can log them correctly, and it'll save space.
Okay, no, it sounds like a good idea. We had talked about this during the budget, and you had mentioned doing this. I personally think it's a good idea. If you can just get us some information on where you're going to order it from and the exact cost, so we know that we're transferring the proper amount of money, we'll be all set.
Yeah, we are. It's a little more than that. It was like 8,600. I added a little extra there for the roll of paper. I wouldn't mind having a roll of paper with it.
What?
But yeah, that number is pretty close to the number.
Okay.
I mean, it's like,
Yeah, if you could get some information down to Dwayne's office, we'll move this forward to November 6th with the other stuff.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to talk to Rob about this, but he's had to do a patch for his software, which was new this year, and had to hire a company to do the patch. It was a $4,000 patch to be able to access his historical data. I was gonna cover that, but my cost, I don't have that available to me now. I thought I did, but
Okay.
we've used it for some other
now I should
geospatial.
have that dollar amount because we noticed that today.
Yeah, I've got it. It's 4,000 for
We
that.
do still have that in that software line item. 'Cause we
Oh,
have
you
not-
do?
Yes.
Okay.
We have not sent that check yet.
Oh, okay.
Sitting
I
on
thought you
It
had.
is sitting on Rose's desk. Your guys' accounting is showing 0 in my software, but
Okay.
it's still there.
Okay, that's what I was gonna check, because I was gonna say we could go ahead and see if we could transfer
Yeah.
the four to cover that patch for that out of this too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're good
use
with
it
what
now.
we got then. All right, all set, Rob?
Yep.
You guys okay with that?
Sounds like a good idea.
All right. All right, the last one is, we're back here with Pets R Us again. We recently gave them funding for March, April, and April, May, and June. And they're back requesting funds for July, August, September. What I'd like to do is have some kind of a discussion on just finishing out the year, so that they know what they're going to get for the year, and we can be done dealing with this. We've currently got about 27.5 in that account. I'd like to just consider giving them 25,000, which would be to the end of the year. We budgeted for next year, and no one seemed opposed to that idea. I know there's still a few bugs, but I know that I think that the back and forth has been much better lately. Brian's been working with them. we've seemed to run into an issue where dogs don't know boundaries between city and county, and neither do to the, the animal control guy at some point doesn't either, because if you look at a map of Logansport, unless you got the map in the back of your truck, you're going to have a tough time knowing if you're in the city or the county many times. So that's been an issue, but I think overall, they're trying to work with him on a couple feral cat colonies we got over on Broadway. So I'll just open it up. I know this is always a fun topic, and everyone wants to chat about it.
I'll get my part out of the way. Just as, and Dave, I'm sure you have the numbers. July 16 refusals, August 5 refusals, September 1 refusal. Again, I know we had a meeting and we discussed things, so after a certain point in August, things have been cleared up a little bit. I know today there was an issue. It looks like they got it resolved. They had 2 dogs that needed to be taken in. Brian did call because he was out on another call, and the city officers had to deal with it. They had no kennels available, but they did put them out in the yard. So they accepted the animals, but they still somehow don't have kennels available. I would, again, when you look at these numbers, I know the last couple months, I think it was April, May, and June, they didn't have a lot of refusals, and then July, August, and September, they did. Obviously, those numbers have went down because of the discussions that we had after August.
July was an ugly month. I have no doubt about that. July was an ugly month.
July was a little different. So, again, council's going to make their decision on how they get paid. It's still not a flawless delivery on what we're doing, but just as a heads up, those are the numbers for the last 3 months. I don't have the numbers with me of how many were taken in.
I've got them all.
I was going to say, I figured you did.
I don't know that I brought them all with me. I brought some stuff with me, but.
Yep, that's all I got as far as the numbers that were refused.
Yep.
Thank you.
On this document, if you keep going down, the numbers that were accepted.
Yeah, but it doesn't show the refused.
Right.
But I would say this, here's a couple things, and I know this thing has been a struggle. It's something I wish I'd never got in the middle of, to be quite honest with you. But Brian took a dog to Van Licks, and they wouldn't take it. It was sick. They don't want those animals, just like Pets R Us doesn't want you to bring a sickly dog out there and put it in with a bunch of healthy animals. We can sit here and say this or that or this or that, but I think what I just want to emphasize is I'll never give up on the idea that it makes sense to keep it local. We're getting closer and closer. I went out and talked, this feral cat thing, I went over and looked. Most of them look like they're on their last leg, but the guy that is complaining about all these cats is the guy that's feeding them. So how do you make sense out of this stuff? And the only alternative is to take them straight from there to somebody that can just put them to sleep, because they're not well. You don't want to put them in with the ones they've spent funds on. So we've been out and talked to Doc Anderson. His brother is kind of keeping the doors open out there, and we're hoping that he would accept them just to put them to sleep. Haven't heard back from him yet, but it's never going to be seamless. There's always going to be, we've got to keep working towards the end goal and not struggling about the day-to-day. There was another dog that was taken out there. My understanding is got away from Brian, ended up out in the pen, got out of the pen, and it was somebody that lived out in the county's animal, and they were looking all over for it. And fortunately, they did find their animal and get it back. There's just this city-county thing. We got to figure it out, because it's not working taking them 2 different places. And like I said, Von Lick's not going to be the total answer either, because they don't want sick and hurt animals. They don't want to deal with them either. So we got to figure something out on top of where you take the ones that are healthy. But it doesn't help their situation if we keep bickering over how we're going to help them financially either. it just makes their job tougher and tougher all the time. So that's my 20 cents worth, and it's open for anybody to say yay or nay, but we need to make some kind of a decision to move it forward or not.
I guess this is probably a question for Dwayne, more than council, but you require everyone within the city to have a contract in order to pay things, as far as invoices and things like that. But it doesn't seem like we have an active contract with Pets R Us. So is that different than what we do in our departments, like as far as invoicing, or?
We've looked at it as they were providing a service, and they were, since they were a nonprofit, that they were doing it. And we've not.
And they are invoicing us. We allocated funds at the start of the year and told them if they invoiced us. It's kind of like, we have a contract with CLEDO. We have an ordinance with CLEDO. We don't really have a contract with Bill. We have an ordinance that says he gets X number of seated dollars a year.
That's how we've
Okay,
paid them
so
through
it's an
resolution.
ordinance, or a resolution.
Right,
Okay,
we've not budgeted just to
Right.
give them money, like we would, let's say, if somebody has a copier contract and they're getting $12,000 a year off of us for that, we contract that. But for this, because it's done by resolution, we don't have to have that contract.
Okay.
I mean, it's not saying we shouldn't, or it wouldn't be a
Right,
good
sure.
move to have us have more background on what is or isn't acceptable, but by doing it by resolution, we kind of get around it.
Okay, makes sense. I was just curious.
Dave, when we did the ordinance, we went through a lot of stuff about like the dog you just mentioned, it was a county dog, it ended up in the city, and we caught it, and then they, I assume, came and got it. On that, we had a provision that they weren't supposed to get it back until they came into the clerk treasurer's office and they paid
Oh,
a fee.
that's an issue on our end, Kelly, because the paperwork isn't being left there, and I can tell you that just like, I've got the September, and I believe it's the police report, if I brought it with me here, their monthly statement. We got 3 bite cases in there. They got the 2 from up on the north side, which have been held for at least a month now while they're trying to, I believe they're prosecuting the family that owned those dogs, because they had 7 violations on file, never paid a nickel.
Is that on Michigan Avenue?
Yes, the lady that got, and she got hurt bad. She got hurt bad, that lady did. But my point is, so he brought in 6 animals to the shelter, and it says, total city ordinances issued, 0. I don't know why that is. The idea was make them pay to get their animal back, they'll learn their lesson. But if you don't cite them, and you don't even have to know whose animal it is, if it's attached to that animal that came in, that person comes in and say, hey, this is you say, well, here, I'm gonna put your name on this fine, go up to the city building. It's just a matter of coordinating between the 2 of us to get these things done. I don't think we've collected a dime more than we did before, Kelly, before you rewrote the ordinance. So, we have work to do also. There's work all the way around on this thing to get it ironed out.
I'm fine with giving them money for the services they've provided, but I do think, like you said, a contract does need to happen in the future.
That's the intent for next year, to have a contract and outline what everybody, so that we don't have to sit here and go through with this. If there's issues, we discuss them in a different forum, I guess.
So Dave, are you wanting to give them the 25,000 in November, but then not require them to give us an invoice before getting paid?
No, I would just,
Okay.
well, I guess I'm looking for,
That way we don't, are you trying to prevent it to where we don't have to keep going through this process
I would
here?
like to have this
Gotcha.
process for the end of the year, and then have something written up to where this is the expectation. You give us whatever we want, and on a quarterly basis, just pay them. And we just need to continue to work out the bugs on this.
Absolutely, I agree.
Isn't that R supposed to be backwards?
I never figured, or at least bigger. I don't know.
All right, just wanted to clarify.
Amy, what would you like to do?
I'm with you. I'm ready to move past what we have right now, pay them, and then get some stuff in writing to hold them accountable.
I think my thoughts on this have been pretty clear, so I won't reiterate too often or too much on it. But I'd rather not pay them out for the rest of the year. I think right now, having them come and request the money is about our only way of making sure things continue to get better. So if we just say, hey, for the rest of the year, you're good. Who's to say next month they don't perfuse 20 animals and they got their money for the rest of the year, and possibly a completely different council next year. Like Carl McPherson, you say, I'm just one vote though, so.
All right. There is a Carl McPherson Jr., you know.
Oh, Carl McPherson Senior. That's just my opinion. Though. I'd rather use it as an accountability tool until we have a contract written. And that's not just me trying to be a pain. I just think with taxpayer money being used, it's our best tool right now without any kind of formal agreement or expectation written out.
But you still could give them the money, but then just, like, give them the 12,500 now, and then.
Because it seems like things, yeah, because I think things seem like they're doing better, and I haven't received any complaints about how people have been treated, so like, right now, I think I could vote for the 12,500, but I won't vote for the full amount for the rest of the year.
So, yeah, do you want to do it for the services provided?
We can do that,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. Sure.
All righty then. We will move this forward and pay out the 12.5. We'll write up a resolution for the November 6th meeting. And unless someone out there has something I've forgotten, finance is over. It's 7:01.
Councilman Petey had advertised a Rules Committee meeting tonight, but since there is no quorum for that committee, it will not happen tonight and will be postponed for a later date.
That's the one they need for the fire department?
Sorry, guys.
It's really a hang-up.
I can't do anything about the rules.
How many are
There's 3 members. I'm not even a member of that committee. I was just asked to run it.
Amy,
Scott,
Larry, and
Larry,
Scott.
and Amy's the only member of the committee present. There is no quorum. So legally, we cannot hold the committee.
Who's the other
Scott, Larry, and Amy.
member?
Amy's the only member
All right.
present from the committee. There's not a quorum, so nothing I can do about it.
Maybe do a point. That's your guys', because it is getting to the point where they're having troubles they can't enforce.
Well, I'm hoping that he'll be able to.
Wouldn't it, I mean, have to be the quorum of the,
I'm hoping that he can get another one scheduled by the end of the week. 48-hour notice, right? So-
Nobody objects to it, it's just a matter.
Have you got the ordinance written?
Yeah.
We could just hold it right before the next council meeting if you like.
November
Who
6th.
has it? I mean, do you have it?
With chief.
Yeah, I mean, it's out there. Somebody's got it. I mean, I can come up with a copy if you need it, but I thought we already had everybody's hands, including Scott, or send it to Scott, because he called about it.
Yeah,
Also
I've
got-
never had it sent to me.
I don't think I've ever seen it.
We've got handbook issues we need to address to before the end of the year, and we need to get the holiday schedule passed before the end of the year to put in. So those are all issues that need to go through rules.
so do we want to plan,
Right.
are you available
So there's
before
two
the
other
next
things.
meeting? Yeah. So do we want to plan for Monday?
Like an hour ahead of the council meeting or something?
Well, most if not all of us should be here, so I think.
You think it'll take half hour or maybe 6?
Yeah,
Sure.
we'll make an executive decision.
Who's gonna set the doggone meeting?
So. That's kind of,
Yeah, I'll be there.
Well, the big thing for us is get the first reading in, and then you can amend stuff for the December reading. But the first reading needs to get done so that we're on that track accordingly.
Okay.
And I can make sure all the handbook stuff gets out, for sure. So, okay?
Done here.
Sorry to be the bearer of bad news.